only, as I was telling you, as a dealer, but as an owner of these products, that it's extremely important for us to get the feedback here from not only your sales professionals, but your customers as well. On behalf of Ford, I want to say thank you for all you do. There are a lot of stores that don't deliver a Mustang a month. And you know, that car, if you think about it, back in '65 when it came out as a 65.5/66, you know, 64.5/65, they were titled all 65s, right? 64.5 was when the plant ran out of the parts, and they were made at 3 plants by that time. They did 1 million in 18 months. Back in the day. But the Mustang sports car segment isn't as large as it once was, and you guys over-index to that, and we truly appreciate it. For those of us who have been on at least 3 generations of Mustang, I've worked on Gen 4, Gen 5, and Gen 6. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, because there are a lot of stores that, maybe their customers don't know what the third pedal is for, you know, and I truly appreciate that, and Ford Motor Company appreciates it. 55 years of Mustang. We have had in the 60s, for some of those folks who are my age, you know, everybody believed that that was the quintessential point of the muscle car era. And I will tell you that while it was very good, where you had the Bosses, the 302s, the Boss 9s, the GT350s, the GT500s, you had all of those different performance derivatives. We now have in your showrooms that you guys are able to sell in 2020 9 different performance derivatives of the Mustang. From the, and you guys haven't seen it yet, it was actually out at Road Atlanta, but I had to take it to Myrtle Beach. We got to keep this one here. The high performance package Mustang on the EcoBoost, it is the Focus RS motor. So the engineers out in Arizona on the test grounds, and when you put enthusiasts with track time, tools, parts, good things happen. Probably kind of like out in your shop back there, when you get somebody around and you try to start playing with things, they literally took the RS, the Focus RS motor that was in the test mule out in Arizona, took it, transported it 90 degrees so it could be a rear wheel drive, 200 mile an hour, paper clips, tape, that type of stuff, put it together and started playing with it as a play toy out on the proving grounds. 15 months later, that is the high performance package EcoBoost. That EcoBoost motor will have 330 horsepower and 350 foot-pounds of torque. For those of you who are my age or even a little older, it has the old Hypo badge on the side, even though Hypo should be reserved for 8-cylinder motors. It has a current year's rendition of the Hypo badge on the side. That car with the Pilot, the Corsa 4s and the Magna Ride, it is as fun as the V8s on a short road course, and on a lot of the short road courses, I will beat the V8 Mustang Performance Pack 1 in it. And that's going to be in the dealership starting this year with the 20 model year. My point is, you're gonna have 9 different flavors, from your Bullet, your Performance Pack 1, your Performance Pack 2, your GT350, your GT350R, your GT500, your high performance package, just to start. And that doesn't include the things that we sell out of there as part numbers. The Cobra Jet, you know, there are 8-second that you actually sell as a part number out of your parts shop here. And the FPS 350S, which is the race car. So there's no better time to be a performance enthusiast than now, and including some of our competitors, and I know you guys carry some of that. I mean, the Challenger and the Charger and the Hellcat and the Demon. If you think of all of those things that are building horsepower and building performance, there's no better time to be a muscle car enthusiast or a muscle car dealership than any time that we've done since the 60s. You can go back to the Fairlanes and some of the old drag school, I mean old school cars, but 9 different performance models that you'll have out here. So the penultimate GT500. I start out by saying this isn't your grandpa's GT500. Right? Back in '67, when Carroll came back from Le Mans, you see the old ads that he used to do, the Le Mans-inspired engine in your Shelby GT500. And that GT500 had things in it like radio, it had air conditioning. It was a straight line, big block monster, but it couldn't go left and right to save its soul, kind of like the Demon. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to say that here. I know I'm in a cross-pollinated shop. Turning the Demon left and right is kind of hard. So that car was a straight line monster. The GT350 that Carol came out with in the Mustang in 65, won SCCA Production B in 65 and in 66. The first car built actually won 12 of the first 14 races. That was your left and right car. Your GT500 was your straight line car. That's your grandpa's GT500. This GT500 is the fastest production Mustang we've done in a straight line, and the fastest production Mustang we have done that can go out at Road Atlanta and run times that are very akin and beat cars that are 2 and 3 times its purchase price. I'll say that again. It beats cars that are 3 times its purchase price on Road Atlanta. VIR is where we do most of our testing. In that case, this one's almost as fast as that one. And that's our $600,000 plus, Ford GT Le Mans winning car. So how do you go about doing that? First off, straight out of your showroom, you drive this one, not this version of it, but you drive the Shelby GT500 base version out the door over here, and where's the nearest quarter mile drag strip here? I can say Milan in Michigan. So you drive out there, sub 11 second. Now, Demon's, 8 second, what is Demon? 8.5, 9 with the little kid on it. Right out of the showroom, this will be sub 11, and I'm not saying 10.9. I know what the number is. We're gonna let the journalist and everybody else come out and tell you, but it is unbelievably quick. Straight line. It is 0 to 60 in the mid 3s on a 4,000 pound car. It is as fast, let me put it to you this way. 0 to 100 to 0, 10.6 seconds on a 4,000 pound car. Now, how do you go about doing that? The men and women of Ford Performance, it's precursor SVT, SVO, SVE, you go back through the days. Started out with the 5.2 liter. Now you know the GT350, 5.2 liter flat plane crank, naturally aspirated, 8,250 RPM, 526 horsepower, just great engine. The ones out at Utah for the school, that when people buy a GT350, they get to go out to Utah to go take the class. We've put more than 25,000 track miles on those cars with only 2 non-pilot error created engine issues. So the motor itself is relatively bulletproof. That's the base of this motor. Then you take that 5.2 liter, you reinforce some of the head and the bolt structure in there, you put in a cross plane crank, and you put a 2.65 liter Eaton-based supercharger. I'll think about that for a second. The EcoBoost Mustang that you sell to your consumers is 2.3 liters. We are putting a supercharger that has 2.65 liters on top of an 8-cylinder 5.2 liter motor to generate more than 760 horsepower and more than 625 foot-pounds of torque. That is unbelievable amounts of power under there. Now, some of the things that you'll notice in here, and when you come up here, you'll see that every person who builds the engine at the Romeo niche engine line, they're built by hand, they sign those engines. Now, when the hood is closed, you'll see that blower sits pretty low in there. Eaton designed this with the men and women of Ford Performance to fit in between the V, to go down lower in there so that you still had the view coming over your hood. Now, when they ended up doing that, they had to change how the blower impellers were designed. And they kind of are shaped like an eggplant. You guys ever cook with eggplant and it kind of thin up on top with the little nodules and then kind of goes wider at the base? If you slice it, that's the shape of the impeller blades to pull in capability of more than 20 pounds of boost. We have it set at about 12 pounds of boost for the calibration in there. But a uniquely designed supercharger specifically for that vehicle. And for some of the other folks that were on here, when we opened up the hood, we take over the standard carbon fiber composite grill opening radiator support that is in the GT350 today. We do that for its lightweight capabilities and its strength for torsional rigidity, because the torque you're putting through that. So you notice the lights are off the old school Mustang, right? The new 19s and 20s, those lights look a little bit different, don't they? Well, we wanted the lighter weight and structural integrity from this. Now, when you look from the front, and you have a GT350 there, it's about the same opening. We are putting twice as much air through it, right? Because you now have the cooling for the supercharger. Now you need the aero to keep the thing on the ground, both reduced coefficient of drag and downforce, which are points of a triangle that are mutually exclusive, right? If you more coefficient of drag, you're not going to get the speeds that you need to get to the downforce. So the designers and engineers had to work together to put through all of that air through 11 different coolers, and you can see all the functional openings along the front there that go to the various coolers in there, including axle cooler, well, axle coolers going from the back, supercharger, secondary charger, DCT transmission, engine to air exchanger. There's 11 different ducts and cooling systems that are in there to maintain that speed at track. Drag strip repeated starts, if you think about it. Now down here, I'm sure ambient, you're running about 100 degrees maybe in the summer, and track temp's going to be about $140, $150, and it's dry heat here, right? No. No heat soak out of the blower too either. So that cooler was set up. But if you look at the nose of this thing, it screams out Cobra. Does anybody remember Carroll's old two-seaters? You know, the CSX 2000 FIA type two-seater that he won his first world championship with on the Daytona Coupes? That nose opening is about the same. But if you look down the sides of the design here, and because we're near Atlanta, the home of Coca-Cola, what they call this side design is the Coke bottle effect, which is out, in, and then back out again. If you think of the old school Coke bottles, like when I was growing up, had the little top, it kind of came in and then went wider at the base. That is not only good for aerodynamic design, it makes it look fast standing still. And so the designers did a great job with it. Now, a 6-foot square functional air vent, along with secondary latch system to hold that nose down, right? Because when you're actually pushing that amount of air through, you're going to get lift at 180 miles an hour, where you're going to get lift in the hood. So you need some place for the air to go. And if you're just a show and shine person and takes it to the Cars and Coffee on the weekend, there's a pan underneath there. The pan actually removes from when you go for track, so that air functions to go out. But to get the airflow we needed 6 square feet of air extractor, and it goes straight on through. Hood pins, which is pretty cool. The 60s era Shelby GT500s and even the KR of 0809, 0809 had the push and twist pins. 67, 68, 69 had the metal piece coming through it with the little cotter ring and the cable. You know, those were on there for, like, they needed those hood pins on there from the aero standpoint back in the day, but they were protruding, and then when you had to close it, you had to kind of like line up your hood to make sure that the holes lined up. Well, we needed the same functional air secondary latching system. So it still has the primary, and then this is the secondary. This was developed off of, if you saw me slam it, I just turned and slammed it. This is patented, and it was patented by a Ford master technician. One of the techs that worked at one of the Ford stores actually patented this technology and then worked with the men and women of Ford Performance to help develop this so that you could have it with the cone base so you can just close it in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of...
We could have shared
It's the opportunity on there. So anyways, that's more of the aero. Now, if you go to the side here, we call these splitter wickers. And the nose, you'll see they come up underneath the nose. In the aero development, when you're taking a car to develop low coefficient of drag, high downforce, and good volume of air to go through and cooling, you have to go and take it to first on the computer, then to a slow speed wind tunnel, then to the track, then to the high speed wind tunnel that costs about $8,000 an hour to rent. That's a 200 mile an hour wind tunnel testing that we do in Charlotte. Now it has a rolling road underneath it, so it can simulate the air. In the old school, what you'd have to do is say, okay, my computer says it's going to do this. I see it in the slow wind tunnel doing this. I see it out on the track doing this. Here in the high speed it's doing this. I need to change something to improve it. The time that it would take to retool those parts to go back in and test it was months. Now they did 3D computer printed parts. So they get the test results from the slow wind tunnel, put certain parts in it when we shipped it down to Charlotte to run, or to VIR to run. Then when it went to the Charlotte wind tunnel, they could have a new part doing something different there. It compressed months out of the timing, that also helped lower the cost, but also improve the performance of the vehicle. Again, innovation and technology that is on our $90,000 Mustang that actually ends up leading into the cars and trucks that normal people drive. So it's kind of a cool piece to it. If you go down along the side here, these are exposed carbon fiber wheels. We're still the only tier 1 manufacturer in the sports car segment that is using exposed carbon fiber. They're done by Carbon Revolution, the same company that does these wheels, and the same company, not yours, but the carbon fiber wheels on the Ford GT, and the carbon fiber wheels that we use on the GT350R. That saves more than 50 pounds of unsprung rotational mass. Now, I'm of the age the best weight for me to lose is here. On a car, the best place to lose weight is front end, unsprung rotational mass, right? So you can balance it at 50-50. Saving 50 pounds across the board is unbelievable amount of weight save with absolutely no reduction. Actually, they are stronger than the aluminum wheels that are put out there from a torsional rigidity standpoint. Now, when you go to the wheels and tires, these are Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2s. They are soft. They really don't like cold weather, which is good for Atlanta, but like I was telling Patrick on the way down here, I don't let executives drive this car below 50 degrees, right? Because those tires, that compound gets really, really dicey when it gets cold. But for the track performance, they're absolutely incredible. Brakes. The 65 SCCA Production B Championship car that Carol ran, which was the 350R, we call them R's, competition models back in the day, had wheels with the outside diameter of 15 inches. These rotors have an outside diameter of 16 and a half. The rotor is larger than the wheels that went on there. When you have a car that it can go 0 to 60 in 3.5, you need to be able to stop them. So it's the same design that was on the GT350, increasing the swept area, which is the area under the pad, by 25% under a 6-piston caliper from Brembo. 0 to 100 to 0 in 10.6 seconds, and the brakes are what help do it. As you go around to the back, you have this carbon fiber wing on the carbon fiber track package. That is the exact dimensions of the wing off of our GT4 race cars. Made in carbon fiber with the attachment points on here. 2-position customer adjustable. I mean, you put it in its up position when you're running VIR or Road Atlanta, unless you really want to get, I don't know, you just really want to drive with it up there. It kind of slows it down on the street. It's not as fuel efficient either, by the way. It can go back into its resting position. But again, something taken straight from the racetrack that the men and women of the Ford Performance Racing teams take out and put specifically on the cars that your customers can buy. And then one of my favorite things in the back, and we'll start it up here so you can hear it. You need to look at these exhaust pipes. They're just huge. They're just mammoth. Huge. Now I've worked on Mustangs since like the 03, 04 Cobra, and I thought the old Cobra R's. You remember the Cobra R's that we sold as a race part? I thought those exhausts were big. The ones on the KR was the FR1 pipes, right? They were 3.5, almost 4 inches. Those are 5.5-inch tips, including electronic controlled valves. Not unlike you get in the normal Mustang, right? But they are functional into the calibration for the vehicle. So when you set the modes, then they will be actuated differently as you are driving through it. And it sounds absolutely menacing. And then if you have very conservative neighbors, like the people who typed the note up to my door that said, "Jim, we like having you in the neighborhood, but your cars need to be quieter," legitimately happened. We have the quiet neighbor mode, right? You have your quiet mode, so you can set the alarm time for, don't start it up in quiet mode from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. That's when I do it. After 7 a.m., I think they need to be woken up anyway. So you can go through and you will hear that. The undercarriage and the underside, we flip the cars out on our displays. We flip them up on the side where you can see. Now the aero is designed underneath on the pans where the aero actually feeds not only the rear brakes, but also the axle cooler in the back brings the air up. So it is aero holistically designed all the way around the car, not just on the top and the sides where you see the wings. And then finally, and this I'm sure your customers have approached you on, it doesn't have a third pedal. It is a legit dual clutch 7-speed, specifically designed Tremec box for this car. Now there was a reason we did this. It is not an automatic transmission. Where's my technician crew? Valve body, pressures, clutch packs, none of that stuff exists in this thing, right? It is a manual transmission that uses the third pedal electronically. Now I'm a decent driver, right? I'm not a great driver, I'm not a poor driver on the racetrack. Gary Patterson and Vince Laviolette, the chief test drivers for Carroll when he was alive, they're really good shifters. There is no way on earth that as fast as they are, that they can shift as fast as this DCT does. So the men and women of Ford Performance built this to be the fastest on the racetrack, and to do that, that dual clutch manual transmission is the best way to do it because it can shift in hundredths of a millisecond. And where does that make a difference? It makes a difference on when you can get back into the throttle coming out of the apex in the right gear. So if you're going left foot, you pull down, you do your heel toe, you roll over to your throttle to pep up the thing to kind of go back into it, this car can do that in hundredths of a millisecond as opposed to that. And that makes a huge difference on I think Road Atlanta's what, 16 turns in its full configuration, 16, 17 turns? That makes a huge, huge difference. So that is why we put it in there. And for those Shelby customers, and I'm one of them, I'm a solid rear axle knuckle driver, right? You know, love my solid rear axle, can't believe they put independent rear suspension in it. Kidding, there's a reason to do that. But those folks, for the first time in 50 years, we have both the GT350 and the GT500 in the showrooms at the same time. So if you really want that third pedal and you want to manually shift, and there's a lot of good fun reasons to do it, you still have the GT350 available. If you want the all-out performance vehicle, then what you do is the DCT transmission that we built with Tremec. So that's kind of it overall in a nutshell. What kind of questions do we have? There are no.
He's here.
Can it?